Okay, now to finish off today's episode, we're going to be talking about Tiger King, continuing on from last week's analysis. We're going to be doing this as a spoiler corner. It's going to be focusing more on the elements towards the end, which obviously are spoilers. So, if you haven't seen it, basically, we're going to be talking about this until the end of the episode, so you might want to stop listening here. On YouTube, there will be an annotation or something to skip. Not an annotation. What is it? Time code. There'll be a time code to skip ahead. But yeah, we are going to basically be talking about this for the rest of the episode. So yeah, spoiler corner, Tiger King. What you
Okay.
got to say, Andrew?
Well, so we should raise that between last week and this week, the after show was released as well, which is
Oh yes,
an additional episode, which is basically a follow up, and in my opinion, almost entirely useless.
yeah, completely superfluous. I
um,
felt it. It seemed very fanboyish the way it was made.
yes, I think
Like
that.
I was hoping for basically the original documentarians to be interviewing the people and asking follow up questions,
Yeah, I wanted
you
that
know,
as well
to clarify stuff.
because
But
also
what
he.
basically was, it was the guy from Community going, "Hey, did you know you're a meme now?" Yeah. Isn't that funny? Sure. It's basically that for 40 minutes.
Yeah. Also, well,
Doesn't
there was
help
a
that I don't
lot.
like the guy from Community anyway.
Well, yeah. I haven't seen Community, so I wouldn't know.
Like I was saying to you, I really didn't like Community, and I thought that's going to get very controversial. But I couldn't stand it past 3 episodes, and part of the reason is because that the guy who's doing interviews in Tiger King, he's the main character, and he's an arsehole. But not a fun arsehole, just a misogynistic arsehole who's not funny. I don't know why if he's supposed to be funny, but he's a dick, and not in the fun Archer way, just in a dick way.
Right.
Don't like Community. Anyway, let's get on Tiger King.
Okay. We should do a section on arsehole characters, though.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting, like how to distinguish what makes a good one. Okay, for another time we'll do that.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Um. Okay. So, picking up from where we left off last week, um, we were talking about how the documentarians manipulate you to feel certain things. Um,
Yes.
I also wanted to. We will raise the a big thing we didn't really talk about that much last time was the animal abuse part of it, um, and how aware of that we should be, and our our opinions on that and what we think the show does for it, or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
so, what did you think of the ending then? Of the last
Um.
episode and its conclusion and such.
Well, so I mean, basically the end of it is that because Joe Exotic makes these threats against Carol's life constantly, and he basically ends up going to pay a hitman to take her out, and that's sort of it ends up being a setup, which is what gets him arrested and tried for attempted murder. I mean, there's some of the people on the show were like saying like, "Oh, he was set up, and he was never going to do it anyway." My response to that is like, because I'm sort of somewhere in the middle on that. Because on the one hand, yes, it does seem like a lot of hot air, and like, I'm not sure necessarily to what extent he would have gone through with it if he wasn't directly offered, here's a really cheap assassin. Like literally, it was like what, a
Three
£3,000,
grand.
$3,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's which someone was commenting, I think on the after show, but somewhere they were saying like that's suspiciously cheap for an assassin,
Yeah.
and shouldn't have fallen for it. So on on the one hand there is the like, would he have done it if he
Well, the
wasn't pushed by the sting operation? But on the other hand, he's so unhinged. I think he would have. He was clearly thinking about it in great detail.
Yeah.
Like I think it
Well,
was
the
more
other
than
thing
just empty
is
threat.
about the assassin is that
Hmm.
originally it was supposed to be 5 grand, but Joe Exotic could only give him 3 grand, and the
Oh
hitman
yeah.
still agreed to it. And it's like
That's
I was
also
like that
a
was
big
very
red flag.
suspect to me, isn't it? It's like that's
Yeah.
why would you do that?
But then, of course, I don't think Joe Exotic's probably smart enough to really realize to that he's probably he's so clouded with hate for Carol that he's like, whatever, just get her killed. Which I
So
mean, I think the thing is as well because even if that setup didn't happen and it was a setup, but a setup he was still dumb enough to fall for, even when it was quite obvious, like we were just
yeah,
saying. But I think the thing is he was clearly planning it out and like snooping out her cycling route and working out where he'd go to kill her. And I think that does push it into like he would have done it eventually, kind of thing,
yeah,
in some
yeah,
fashion. So I think it is fair that that he ended up in jail. I think that was reasonable.
yeah. But also, like, so I've seen a thing. What I want to talk about mostly today. I saw a
Yeah.
review that said that Tiger King is a gross glorification of animal abuse and its abusers. To which I say,
Right.
you have to be an insanely dense motherfucker to believe that. Obviously, I
To
don't think
believe that
it
the show
does.
is glorifying it.
Yeah, well, I don't think it does enough to damn it, but that's a different thing. But it does not glorify it at all. Like, who looks at the abusers, so Joe Exotic, and be's like, yeah, I want to be like him. A man who literally went to jail for 17 counts of animal abuse.
Yeah.
You know, how dense have you got to be to think that that's a glorification at all? You know, and
So one.
also it goes out of its way to show you how unhinged literally every single one of the animal abusers are. And I
So
think,
that's the one thing I'd say is like I wouldn't say it certainly doesn't glorify animal abuse, but I do think it does. As some people have criticized, I don't think it focuses enough on it.
yeah,
Like
well,
it's
that's
quite a
what I
big
say.
subject
Like, I
area that
don't, I
sort of
don't,
eschews. Yeah.
yeah, I don't think it does enough to damn it, but that's a different thing. It definitely
Yeah.
doesn't glorify it.
No.
Because I think, how can you, but even Jeff Lowe and Doc Antle and the other guy, the one with the monkey, like, these people are all insane. And it's like,
Yeah.
that is not a glorification. These people are mad, and it's going out of its way to villainize them and make you want to not be anything like them.
Yeah.
Even the
That.
supposed good ones like Carol Baskin, I mean, it villainizes her a lot as well. And
Yeah.
it's like, you don't want to be anything like these people because they're insane. And like, I wouldn't go to any of their zoos because they're all mental. It's like, why
Hmm.
would you? It's not a glorification at all.
And talking about Carol Baskin, so I've read another criticism about the show about it's trying to show her on like the same level of sort of just as bad as Joe Exotic and Doc Antle and the rest of them, when actually hers is a sanctuary, which I did comment on last week. But what
Yeah,
this criticism I saw said was basically because the show doesn't clarify enough about what makes her different and why the sanctuary is better. It ignores that in order to fit in with its mission statement of they're all equally mad and as bad as each other. Like, so for example, there's like a lot of people saying like, oh, why can't I release tigers into the wild? Well, there's a specific reason why you can't. It's to do with because they've been crossbred and mutated, specifically for like the parks and stuff.
yeah.
Therefore, they
It's
can't be
like, oh,
reintroduced into the wild.
there's 9 subspecies of tiger, and they're all crossbred between the subspecies, which is why you can't release them. It's like, that's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
And also, they're
exactly.
because they're fed at a certain feeding time and they don't hunt. That's another big part of it.
Exactly, yeah. And so like I was saying last week, like, oh, Carol's got this sanctuary, but it seems to operate exactly the same as the rest of the zoos. So how is she any better than them? She's as bad. Because that's basically what the documentary does. It doesn't show that side of it and explain in detail that angle in order to make her look worse. So that's another example of the way it manipulates it.
Yeah.
But I think that is one thing. Of course, to try and get a documentary to not manipulate anything is impossible. But I do
Yes.
wish it did do a lot more background about the tigers. I think that's another general criticism. It's too much on the people, and there's not enough about the tigers themselves and the abuse, which is obviously kind of like should be the main point. You'd think like
Yeah.
it's too focused on like wow, look how crazy these humans are, and in the background there's all these animals suffering. So that
Yes.
is one genuine criticism, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think so in the after show, the guy with no legs, who I also can't remember the name of,
Yeah,
he pointed out that obviously Joe did a lot of bad stuff, but the documentary didn't show all the good stuff that he had done, and it's like
right.
it doesn't weigh up both sides. And because the guy with no legs,
Yeah,
he did say like how much good Joe had done. Like I said last week about how he just gave a homeless woman a job and a place to live just out of nowhere,
and there's also
and
he made
also
that Thanksgiving meal for like 200 people, whatever it was.
yeah, and he did apparently like that wasn't a one-off thing. He did that every year for 15 years or something.
Yeah,
And also like he was like very generous and supporting with all of his people, and he'll hire anyone, people who can't be hired anywhere else. He'll give them a chance. There was a lot of positive stuff about him that they don't show, I think.
yeah. I think that's the thing. Like, as mad and sort of unhinged as Joe is, he clearly has like a heart to him. Like, there's a lot I think of a documentary about like, he seems like a very affectionate person. He seems, he's not a psychopath. He's not heartless. He's very much sort of, even if he is abusing his animals, which again isn't shown in enough detail, I don't think. Like,
Yeah,
he's clearly like, at least about humans, he does genuinely have this sort of, he cares for them and he has like this real heart for people.
yeah. um so I mean, I think it's such a good documentary, but it definitely has an agenda, and I think if you're going to watch it, you have to be very aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, but it doesn't take away from it, and I think it is just very good. But yeah, so with the more of the like animal abuse, they also don't show why what Joe and Doc Antle is doing is bad. Obviously, they say like, "Oh yeah, it's bad, it's animal abuse," but you don't know why. You don't know what it's doing to like. Obviously, keeping them
Yeah,
in a
there's a
cage is
difference in
not good.
explaining it and like showing it. Yeah, and like
Yeah,
making the audience feel why it's bad rather than just telling them it is bad.
yeah,
That's filmmaking 101.
yeah. Because there is a,
The
a
thing is,
bit early on where the guy with the monkey says like a tiger needs like 400 square miles of jungle, and there's no cage big enough for that. And it's like
yeah,
they should show that, or they should explain more of like what tigers actually need, more of the tiger's natural habit. They should show more of the of the animals. But obviously, it's not really about the animals at the end of the day, is it? This whole show
no.
is more about the people.
I think overall the tone of the show is much less of an expose, about abuse. It's much more. So it's definitely driven towards entertainment and being like, look how mad these people are. Look at the weird antics they get up to. Like rather than the sort of arguably much more serious tone it should have about yeah, like about exposing the abuse that's going on. It's much
Yeah.
more focused on sort of like the wacky, entertaining side of it.
So that's what I did like on the in the last episode, the political campaign guy, he said, which I thought was very poignant and a very good like last note to leave it on. He said,
Yeah,
with all the money Joe spent trying to fight Carol Baskin, with all the money she spent trying to fight Joe, with all the money that the FBI spent on getting Joe in to imprison him, doing the sting operation, like these millions and millions of dollars, like how much good that could have done for the tigers, for the
yeah,
like wild tiger population, of like to fight extinction and to fight the pollution. Like I thought that was a really good, poignant note.
Mm.
I
I mean,
was
that
like,
really
that's
sums it up. The sort of almost like the main point to take away from all of it. Yeah, it was very well forced out to the final note. Yeah,
yeah. I did really like that. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It was good.
yeah, it's definitely good. It's definitely it's a flawed documentary, and it clearly had its agenda, and like more obviously than maybe some other documentaries do. If you can get past that, it's definitely there's a lot of interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, yeah. There's also a lot of, I don't know, like there's so much they leave out. I think, but also I think because again, like I said last time with the timeline, like you don't know when each interview is recorded or whatever. But there's
Mm.
a lot of retroactively changing things. A lot of retconning from the people. So, in one interview they'll say something, realize that makes them look bad, and in their next interview they'll retcon it and say, "Oh, but I actually meant this."
Yeah,
And I feel like that just muddies the water so much, and especially if you look at the after show, how much retconning all of the people do, like every single one of them, because
mm.
they all suddenly decide in the after show that they all hate Joe Exotic when it's a bit like, so the guy with no legs, um, he I mean, he had an argument with Jeff Lowe and left. He didn't have an argument with Joe Exotic, but the thing, he's like, "Oh yeah, Joe should be in jail." Blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, I mean, this could be the documentary's fault, but it never showed that. It always made it out like you were just his mate.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, that could be the thing. Like maybe maybe it did go down differently, and the documentary showed it, how it wanted to show, and they're like, right, well, we need to use this opportunity to try and set the records straight.
Also,
Which
yeah,
I
I feel
mean,
like this documentary is a
yeah,
very valid excuse for people like Jeff Lowe and Doc Antle to be like, uh, all of these problems. Oh yeah, they were just Joe's fault, but my thing's
hmm,
normal and fine. When actually,
that's
they're just as dodgy, if not more dodgy than Joe was.
yeah, and of course, because Joe's in prison and they're not, they can sort of say what they want, and because
Yeah.
Joe sort of can't as easily respond, you know,
I also would like to, again, in the after show, the producer guy, the guy who smokes indoors and has the like cowboy hat and is like the
yeah,
graveliest voice as if he'd be eating concrete for the last 40 years. Mm.
tasty.
Yeah, that guy. He,
You sure?
in the after show, he said that Joe was actually afraid of tigers.
Oh yeah, that was an interesting revelation. That'd been a great thing to expound upon on the documentary
Well,
if it were
yeah, but
true.
exactly. Which that makes me think it's not true, because even his friends, like his closest friends, never said that.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's such a massive part of deconstructing the Tiger King. Like, why would they not bring that up? So I just feel
Yeah,
like,
you think that would be like a major point.
yeah,
That's almost like a tagline. The king of tigers, afraid of tigers.
yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, phrase better than that.
Yeah,
But
but I just feel like that would absolutely have come up if that were true, which makes me think like what other things have just these people made up because they want to make Joe look bad or themselves look better.
you can say you can make a point about Travis as well.
Yeah, well, that's something else. Like, I feel like obviously they never interviewed him, but was he still alive? Because he died in 2018, was it? I
Um,
think it was 2018 when he killed,
yeah,
because it was just
something like that.
after Joe had run for president or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah, just after Joe had run for the governorship. Um, but by that time the documentary had already started filming.
yeah, they'd already had several years worth of footage in the
Yeah,
can.
which makes me think: did they never interview him, or have they just not showed his interviews? Like, why
Like, is that
does he not feature at all? Other than in
like is that
occasional stock, not stock footage, but occasional archive footage, and then it shows you the bit where he's like, "Oh yeah, he killed himself." So, like, did he not have anything to say at all about any of this?
the only thing I can wonder is if out of matter of like taste and respect, where it's like because he shot himself during production, where they're like, oh, it'll be weird to use his interviews. But I mean, I can't imagine why. You know, it almost seems weird to erase him from it in that case. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
an
the other
interesting
thing. It's like,
omission.
yeah, do they not want his voice to be heard at all then, just because he killed himself?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I can't think of any specific like rule against that. I mean, as long as he signed like release forms and stuff before he died, there'd be no reason not to use him.
Yeah.
His footage.
Well, the other thing could be that his family asked them not to put it in.
Maybe.
It's the other thing that I could think of.
I mean, Occam's razor sort of suggests that's probably more likely rather than like some agenda on the documentarian's part.
Yeah, yeah.
So I
But then
imagine
his
it probably
mum
is
was in
something
it.
like that.
Like, why would his mum comment but then not want? Especially if it's exposing Joe Exotic, you'd think they'd want him, arguably his closest person, to have a say and to pitch in. Which
Yeah.
does also make me think maybe he only said positive things or said something completely different to what everyone else said, and they had to take it out because it didn't match their
Yeah, their
narrative.
agenda.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but then that's just theorizing, isn't it? Because we don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. We can never truly know for sure.
Yeah.
So we've only got our theories left.
So the other thing I would like, there's a Louis Theroux documentary about Joe Exotic
Oh,
from,
really?
yes, there is. I think it's from about 2010, 2011 maybe. And I want to watch that because I
Wow.
want to know Louis Theroux's take on it.
Yeah, and
Uh,
sort of compare and contrast them.
because obviously Louis Theroux documentaries are amazing, but he's such a completely different documentarian to the guys that made Tiger King. I want to see if how different it is.
Yeah. It's also a much Louis Theroux's documentary mode is much different to Tiger King's, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I mean, firstly, Louis Theroux makes a point of being, very much the presenter of his documentaries and being in them and sort of being there asking the questions.
Yes.
While Tiger King doesn't to the same degree.
It's just documentaries are fascinating, aren't they?